So good morning, everyone. I'm Kate Joester. I'm a project coordinator with Living Street Scotland. I'm going to speak for about 20 minutes here about why walking and walking infrastructure matters, what it actually is, and then I'm going to introduce the discussion groups about how we can get that. So why does it matter? I'm not saying walking can save the world, but I am saying it can get us about 80% of the way there. That's probably the only statistic I'll use that I can't back up if you ask me later. Let me see, how do I get to the next slide? There we go, perfect. Why does walking matter? Well, it's a way to get to net zero. Obviously, if people are walking, they're not in cars, and that's important. Walking is a way to improve physical health. I think that's really obvious. It's after all a form of exercise as well as everything else. Improves mental health. We'll go and have a little look at that later. It furthers social and economic justice. I'm going to go into that a bit more because that may be the least intuitive thing that I'm saying here. And it builds local community and economy. We can back that one up too. So, walk to save the planet. Transport is the UK's biggest CO2 emitter. Private cars are 56% of those emissions. So we've succeeded really well in our power industry no longer being the biggest emitter. It's now transport. And that is not heading in the right direction. And specifically, private cars are the biggest single contributor to that. I would argue, and I'm going to argue right now, that the quickest way to get people out of cars is to get them on their feet. If you look at this, this is Transport Scotland data, modal share of all journeys 2019, cars are right up there at the top. But what's directly below that? Walking, and that's walking as the main part of the journey. That's not walking a little bit of the journey. So obviously, lots of people already walk. Most people can walk and know how to walk. So let's focus on the fact that 22% of people, 22% of journeys, sorry, in 2019 were made on foot. Right below that is buses. Public transport users are pedestrians. Your bus doesn't stop at your door. You have to walk to the bus stop. So when we're talking about pedestrian infrastructure, it also crucially serves the purpose of getting people onto public transport for longer journeys that perhaps are less walkable in terms of time. So we've got 7% on buses. We've got that 2% down there on trains as well. We love bikes, but bikes are 1% of journeys. If we are talking about getting people out of their cars in time to meet our net zero targets, in time to save the planet, walking is the intervention. It's the way to go. So this is the bit about mental and physical health. 1 in 6 premature deaths in the UK are attributable to physical inactivity. So there's lots of illnesses and conditions which are related to physical activity, or which can be improved by physical activity. And 1 in 6 deaths in the UK, premature deaths. 40,000 premature deaths each year in the UK are attributed to air pollution. And again, as we know, a significant contributor to air pollution is traffic. That's more than 14 million working days lost to stress, depression, and anxiety every year in the UK. So walking is the most likely way all adults can achieve the recommended levels of physical activity according to NICE. So it works. It works to make people physically healthier. It's achievable, it's maintainable. 74% of adults, this is, I'm afraid, England data, agree we should be reducing the amount we use motor vehicles to improve our health specifically. So this is without all the other considerations. This is about people knowing that they would be healthier if they stopped going by car. And physically active people report being happier, less anxious, and have a stronger sense of social integration. We know that activity prescriptions can be as effective as antidepressants in treating mild depression. So we can address misery, and that's important too, but we can also address the working days lost to it. This is the bit that, well, is my particular passion, and which I think maybe it feels less intuitive to some people. Walking is a social justice issue. We can build communities, and again, social integration is one of those mental health factors. There is a correlation between neighbourhood walkability and neighbourhood social capital. So that's people feeling positive about their neighbourhood being, by various measures, a good place to be. and between perceptions of neighbourhood safety and walking rates. So how safe do you think your neighbourhood is? If it's higher, you're more likely to walk. Now, I think it's pretty clear that this is going to be a circular correlation. If it feels safe to walk, you're more likely to walk. But if there's lots of people walking in your neighbourhood, you probably feel safe to walk yourself. And likewise with social capital. The equity issues, I think, are not fully explored. Who walks? Poorer people, both in terms of their household income, so their sort of personal income, and also living in an area of higher social deprivation, are more likely to walk their main journey. So that's by walking, like that's walking to work, for example. And also poorer children walk to school. If you look at the journey to school, 52% of children walk that key journey. Only 12% of journeys to work are primarily walked journeys. So again, we're talking about social justice for a mode of transport that's strongly biased towards children. Funnily enough, people in remote towns have a very high rate of walking to work. I think that's actually something unexplored. It maybe doesn't relate as closely to the social justice issue, but came across that, loved it, thought you ought to know. When we look at access to a car, which is people who either have to walk everywhere or cycle everywhere or get public transport everywhere, which again requires walking, or would do that if they could get out of their doors, which in some cases they can't. 29% of households in Scotland don't have a car. Car ownership also varies by housing ownership. So 86% of homeowners have a car, private renters 57%, public renters 37%. The least likely households to have a car are single pensioner households. If you look at ability to drive, more men than women have driving licenses. That gap is closing, but that also means that gender justice around access to a car or needing to walk is greater for older women than it is for younger women. Okay. That I'm going to throw in here that so work we did last year on the use of equalities impact assessments in active travel and place projects found most of them have either no at ground level, most of them have either no equalities impact assessment or one which does not recognize any differential impact of active travel. This is a tool we should be using, we must be using. This is a mindset we must be using when we think about walking. And here we go, walk to save the high street. Local economies are significantly improved by walkability and walking rates. It's actually really hard to get hard data on. This is our updated pedestrian pound, which was updated in 2018. It's hard to get national hard data, but we have some really great case studies showing that public realm improvements increase footfall on high streets, increase spending, and increase people's satisfaction with their experience of their high street. And this, now I've convinced you, I know I've convinced you that this matters enormously. Now I'm going to say that the reason that it matters now is because we are in a unique position to use national and international circumstances to get everybody walking. So at COP26, Scotland committed to being a net zero country by 2045. At the moment, National Planning Framework 4 is out of consultation, and it looks at planning for the whole of Scotland, what the frameworks are, what the drivers behind it are, until, funnily enough, 2045. So the whole of the time that we are going to achieve net zero is covered by NPF 4. It is really important. NPF 4's principles are sustainable places, walkable and low traffic, livable places, so living locally, productive places with a particular focus on equity and the well-being economy, and distinctive places. So bang on for all of the stuff that we've just been talking about. The COVID recovery plan for Scotland has a well-being economy focus and wants to address inequalities. So again, bang on target for us. For sort of more ongoing agendas are around loneliness, community mental health, and physical activity targets. Those have been going on for a little while, and I think we kind of understand why walking feeds into them. So this is us saying we've had enough. These cartoons are from an event that we did a few years ago, and I absolutely love them. You'll be seeing more of them as we go through. So walking infrastructure, it isn't rocket science. Actually, when you ask people, you go, yeah, that makes sense. So we're talking about barriers here. So the negative side, what stops people from walking? Poor maintenance of pavements and paths, conflict with other modes of transport. When we were working, this data comes from mostly from our work specifically. So our 3 year Walking Connects project, which was with older people across Scotland, our Out and About project, which was working with, again, sort of furthering that work with older people in specific parts of Scotland, worked back in a few years back in Perth and Kinross, working with access panels to do route planning for disabled people, and also draws on some research. Again, we'll send out these slides if you want them. Well, I think we're sending them out whether you want them or not, to be honest. And that will have the citations that I'm using here. The thing that perhaps came up more strongly than you might expect is places to rest and toilets. If people can't be sure that their legs are going to carry them the whole way, then they also need to be sure that there's a bench, and that it's more important than you think. And toilets, people plan going out around toilets. Now, I think there's going to be a lot of people here who've had to plan around small children and their bladder size. So I think it's going to be quite familiar to a lot of people having to plan around toilets. Older people very typically do it. Disabled people also are another group who have to think quite a lot about toilet access and whether they're going to be able to go out for a period of time. Other people's behaviour. So it kind of calls back to that question of community cohesion and feelings of safety, feeling the solidarity that if you're somebody who's a bit fragile in the street, people are going to collaborate to keep you safe. How to get it right, the positive things. So you need to think about the whole route. We don't walk, we can't walk a journey if we can't walk all of the journey. So if there's one thing wrong, you're going to do it another way, or you're not going to do it at all. So there's no point in fixing this broken pavement if over there is a barrier that the majority of people can't get through, whatever it is. Understand the details, so understand how people experience their environment and exactly what would make a difference. And if we want to talk about walking as a key mode of transport, it needs to be something that people can plan to use using good data, and it needs to be reliable. It needs to be there when you expect it to be there. And that's how you get streets fit for everyone. So thinking a bit more about this whole route approach, ask the question, who's going from where to where? So what is the journey? What are the key journeys? Are we looking at a school street where, you know, a route, for example, from a large piece of housing to the local primary, the local secondary? Are we looking at a route from, now you might be hearing more about this example in lots of other things, for a route from sheltered housing to the shops? Are we looking at a route that goes to a bus stop up a steep hill? That's one that we'll definitely be hearing about in the next webinar. So who is walking? Where are they going from? Where are they going to? Can they make the whole route? How do they know how to get there? Well, yes, one of the things that, I mean, just an example that I found working with a group at a local church, when we looked at maps and went out for walks, people discovered that they could have walked to the church as quickly as they're driven there. They just didn't know. They're so habituated to assuming that the car is the quickest way of getting there. So using techniques with information, with signage, with I love an isochrone map, which is showing how far can you get from here in 5 minutes. And then you go into your place of work and it shows that, oh, you could have walked here quicker than you drove here. Information and signage. If you are walking along a path, signs need to be directed at you as a walker. So when you're going to turn off that path, where are you going to go? What's that road that goes over the path, and so on? There's some really good examples of this, but there's also some really poor examples of this. What might people need on the way? So going back again to toilets, because if you're looking at a destination where people are going to go and spend time, if you're going to be out for more than an hour, there might well need to be a toilet there. Benches, because again, if your route to the bus stop's really steep, you might need to sit down. You can't take the hill away, but you can take the experience of it being too steep away. Play parks, maybe if a family with young kids are going up to town, it might be nice to have a play park on the way so the kids can get their play behavior out before they hit town. And everybody wants their walk to be nice. You know, why shouldn't it be pleasant to walk? It might rain sometimes, it might sometimes be slower, but what it can be is a fantastic opportunity to chat with friends, to listen to music, to listen to bird song, to be in nature. Walking has so many unique attractors that we should be putting them into play. So understanding the detail, again, like I said, it's about what's a good path for this community, for this use. You need to ask communities, and you need to ask them in detail, in really fine detail, that sort of street level. It's not okay to just assume that this is going to be okay for this community here. Planning and reliability. Can people depend on their path being open or being told when it's not going to be open? I nearly went out very early this morning and took spite photographs to illustrate this. Within one street of my house, there is a pavement that's blocked by a sign to tell cars that the road coming up is closed on the left. It's not closed to walkers, but you can't get there now because the pavement's blocked. By contrast, in one street in another direction, you come to a pavement, you walk along a pavement, and then it's suddenly completely blocked by some fencing and builder's rubble beyond it. And the first you hear of it is a big sign actually on that fence that says footway ahead closed. No kidding, you think, as you walk directly into it. Can you expect that snow and ice clearing will happen? Can you expect that leaf clearing will happen? Can you expect that you will be and feel safe on your path, especially if you're a vulnerable walker? So you're somebody who fears falling. Fear of falling is a huge disincentive to walking, particularly for older people and for some disabled people. And is maintenance going to happen? Can you expect that it will be noticed, that it will be taken seriously, and that it will be acted on in a timely way? Okay. This is actually the last slide. Oh, I think I'm coming in on time as well. People are going to be pleased with me. Now you know how to, either what infrastructure you might need or how to find out what infrastructure might be important to communities. You might know already because you've done that work. You might be a community who is, I know what I want. How do I make it happen? Know, as I said, that national policy supports you. That at the moment we're in a national policy position where actually everything is there for you. All of the powers should be behind you. But at local level, like I said, it can be a real struggle, because sometimes that implementation is not coming from those larger perspectives. It's not drawing on those ways of thinking about space and thinking about travel, and be a bit controversial. Sometimes it can be responding to voices which are louder than they need to be, and we need to think about how we can make the voices of people walking, people using public transport, how we can make those voices as politically pertinent as some of the others.